up with a spot update. Of course, the major story on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune says lawyers, party leaders, others dissecting Tinubu's directive. Flush out saboteurs in government, military that's coming from MBF. Stop recruitment of soldiers, establish state police coming from Bode Judge. I hope President walks the talk coming from Okore. FG playing politics with citizens' life. SDP's Adebayo said that. Lawyers question timing, seek clarity. Of course, that's there. All right, moving to other story on page 3, country of particular concern, Ribadu to lead Nigeria's side of working group with United States. On page 27, gunmen abduct 24 farmers in fresh Niger attack, another 7 in Abuja village. On page 5, Nigeria's high inflation eroding incomes, driving continued poverty, World Bank Director warns. Right on page 27, my administration has restored fiscal stability in 3 years. That's coming from Osun State Governor. On page 3, IGP withdraws 11,566 place escort from VIPs. Right, Jonathan safe out of Guinea-Bissau as Nigeria, AU, BCOS condemn coup. That story is on page 10. All right, gunmen attack Ningige's convoy in Anambra, kill 1, injure policeman. All right, let's go to some inside story of this morning. Of course, we'll come to page 2, where we have the story Nigeria ready to tackle insecurity, says Tunji Ojo. All right, 3rd anniversary, my administration has restored fiscal stability, strengthened revenue performance. That's coming from Adeleke, the governor of Osun State. On page 3, Power Probe Reps Committee, Simon BPP, Finance Minister, others. Insecurity, Senate begins process to amend Terrorism Act. All right, let's go to all the stories there this morning. Finally, Senator shows police retirees of exit from contributory pension scheme. That story is there on page 3. All right, we come to page 4. About 40 million people living with HIV globally. That's coming from AHF Director. Panic in Kogi over rumored bandit invasion. NRC, Southwest Development Commission, to revive old sub-service railway route. Right on page 5, Nigeria's high inflation, eroding income, driving continued poverty, World Bank Director warns. AFDB approves $500 million loan for Nigeria's economic governance, energy transition reform. All right, we come to Oyetola calls for stronger partnership among organizations. On page 6, Dangote partners, SIPEM, others for expansion of fertilizer operation in Nigeria, Ethiopia. All right, we go straight to other pages this morning. And we have Kwara United Boss Council journalist. Just match day 3 fixtures. NNL direct club to establish feeder team. Aimba Rangers set for Oriental War. Nothing wrong with Ilorin Stadium pitch. Castina United coach said that. All right, on page 26, you also have the story there. You have Vintage Sport. I want to turn NRS around. That's coming from Philip Schweibel. 2025 AFCON. Okwaraku fires up Eagles. All right, we'll go to the editorial story this morning. Super Eagles 2026 World Cup miss. That story is there. Grab a copy to read. The Nigerian Tribune. All right, Jonathan, safe leave Guinea-Bissau. Senate confirmed ex-rep omitting on 37 others as FCC members. Right on page 11, Atiku Abubakar, the orphan who refused to bow. That story is on page 11. Sokoto Marshal, people-centered approach to security, youth empowerment. All right, let's come to some other stories this morning, and then we'll come to the Eye of Islam. All right, Shekhar Dariu Bochi is dead. EFCC invitation. Sylvia writes EFCC 6th date of appearance. Security, okay, let me leave that. Eye of Islam. Kwara speakers, caller urge parents to give equal priority to religious Western education. Ilorin Quranic School alumnus emerges overall best graduate at Egypt's Al-Aqsa University. Gaza people, a joint winner of our Global Muslim. Online Lagos cleric urges Tinubu to prioritize security over 2027. Greatness of Prophet Muhammad III. All right, upholding truth and justice in Islam. On Friday Extra, to kill a monkey may have brought me renewed fame, but I have been acting for over 30 years. That's coming from Williams Benson. All right, let's go to all the stories. The African fashion takes center stage. All right, the story is on page 16. On page 17, NFVCB holds 5th PAO Nigeria Digital Content Regulation Conference. Honor Bolanle Austin Peters, 8 others. Africa International Film Festival announces 2026 debut in Port Harcourt. Amland or your government collaborates to host Faji December Cultural and Entertainment Festival. All right, let's come to page 18 when accessibility, inclusivity, culture took center stage at National Museum of Unity in Ibadan. FG designate Uyo Airport as international airport. Reps flag off probe of rising insecurity in Abuja despite installed CCTV. Politics and politics page, how Adeleke revolutionized IT digital economy in Osun. Court sanctioned CBN for stalling hearing in 62 aggrieved ex-workers suits. Allowing calls for integration of traditional institution into national counter-terrorism strategy. All right, other stories there. Watch out for Atlanta. That's coming from Lukman. Hall coach Boost Ajayi head AFCON. All right, other stories there. On page 27, bandits abduct 24 farmers in fresh Niger attack. 1 dead, policemen, others injured as gunmen attack Ngigi's convoy in Anambra. Police on trail of man after woman found dead in Ondo Hotel. Troops arrest Air Force official with 2 pump action gun pistol in Kogi. All right, proposed Central Business District residents renew call on Oyo government to gazette remaining developed areas. All right, Ghana marks 80th birthday with book launch. And of course, 120 communities attacked, 12,000 lives lost in Plateau between 2001 and 2025. That's coming from Governor Mutwang. And of course, Makinde reaffirms commitment to serve Oyo State till end of tenure. Okeogun leaders restate support for Makinde PDP. All right, those are the stories there this morning from the Nigerian Tribune. Over to you, Victor.
All right, we have right here on the front page of the Punch newspaper, NNPCL spent 17.5 trillion naira securing food pipelines, others in 12 months. We also have the writer saying non-working refineries got nearly 3 trillion naira and pressure mounts for audit. You'll find more of that on page 19. On page 20, business leaders reject proposed beverage tax hike. And we have this interesting one on page 2. VIPs move to engage NSCDC after 11,000 policemen recall. Safe Schools project stalls in 30 states as abductions rise. And it says states fail to release co-funding. Senate begins probe of 145 billion naira Safe Schools fund. Dodo confirms bandit relocation to Kogi. And we also have this one on page 29. Nigeria condemns Guinea-Bissau coup. Jonathan evacuated on special flights. Well, on the Nation newspaper this morning, we have something glaring at us. Nigeria-US joint working group to hold security talks. And we have the writer saying NSA Ribadu leads federal government's team, coordinated abductions of 42 in Niger, FCT suburb. We also have this one, new excise bill could undermine president's fiscal reform agenda as a warning from the organized private sector. We also have this one, World Bank canvasses slash of imports tariff to lower inflation. And we have AU, ECOWAS, WAIF, and saying no to coup in Guinea-Bissau. All right, we have this one as well. 11,566 policemen withdrawn from VIPs. And we have CBN released 74.41 trillion naira to private sector in October That's it on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. With that, it's a wrap on the newspaper segments. And of course, we'll take a quick break now. Return with the weather reports. Don't go anywhere.
All right, welcome back. It's still AM120 on the Broadcasting Corporation of your state. Of course, this morning, it's time for our interview segment. And we have a guest in the studio who will be doing justice to the conversation. Of course, we're discussing, analyzing your State 2026 budget. You will recall that His Excellency, the Executive Governor of your State, Engineer Seyi Makinde, on Monday proposed a budget of 891.99 billion naira appropriation bill for the 2026 fiscal year, compared with the 684 billion naira approved by the House of Assembly for 2025. The presentation ceremony was held on the floor of the State House of Assembly, Secretariat Agodi, Ibadan. The former governor of Oyo State, the Olubadan of Ibadan land, Oba Rashidi Ladoja, the Alaafin of Oyo, Oba Hakeem Owade, the Olugbo of Orile Igbon, Oba Francis Alao, and several other dignitaries were in attendance. Of course, the budget was tagged a budget of economic expansion. The governor said that out of the proposed figures, 383.34 billion naira will be allocated to recurrent expenditure, while 502.65 billion naira is earmarked for capital expenditure. Of course, as we go on in the conversation, we'll look at the breakdown of the budget. But to do justice to this conversation, ably represented, of course, the Honorable Commissioner for the Ministry of Budget and Planning, ably represented by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Mr. Tunde Anyoleke. Thank you for coming to AM120 this morning.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, let's look at the budget being presented by the governor. Budget of economic expansion. Why the name Budget of Economic Expansion?
Before I go ahead with your question, there is need for me to appreciate a set of people who have contributed immensely towards the success of 2026 budget.
Oh.
And I need to start even from His Excellency,
Okay.
the Executive Governor of Oyo State, Engineer Seyi Makinde, for the support that he has given to my ministry, for us to have documents that we used for the budget process. And at the same time, it's need for me to appreciate the economic team under the able leadership of the Honorable Commissioner for Budget and Economic Planning, Professor Musba Watunde, for the support that he has rendered, even for the ministry. Among the economic team, we have Alhaji KG Bello, is the EA to His Excellency on Finance, Budget and Economic Planning. And at the same time, we have Mr. Honorable Simeo Oyeleke, is SA to His Excellency on economic planning and budget. Also, we have among the team the SSC to His Excellency on budget and economic planning, Honorable Kainde Ogunsanya. And at the same time, I must not forget to appreciate my team, the managing staff of the ministry, for the support, particularly the budget department, because they work very, very hard at ensuring that we have a budget that can stand the test of time. Back to your question, ma'am. His Excellency believes that there is need for us to move from consumption to production.
Okay.
And that's why the budget is tagged the budget of economic expansion, so that a lot of maybe infrastructure that we need to put in place, we have to put in place for economy to strive in Oyo State. And that was the main reason why the budget is tagged the budget of economic expansion.
Okay, all right. Now, looking at these budgets, at first glance, it is easy to notice that we have over half of that allocated to capital expenditure and development projects from what we've seen presently now. What does that entail? What does that involve? Maybe a breakdown will help us understand this better.
Before I go ahead with your question, I need to educate us, especially the populace, on what budget really entails.
Okay.
Because I've had tons is that number that people will be saying that last year maybe an activities AYZ was budgeted for. This year again, that they observe that the same activity has been rolled over to this year. And the belief of maybe the citizen is that the money budgeted for last year, maybe that money has been spent by people involved, which should not be. If I want to explain budgets in layman explanation, I believe that when we are talking about budgets, it's just an estimate of income and expenditure for a set period of time. Let me just give, for instance, December is approaching. And individual may decide to have a budget as regards what will be an income and what will be an expenditure for that month. And maybe as part of the income, we observe that maybe your salary will be part of the income. Maybe you are expecting a contribution that will be form of the income. Maybe as part of the income, maybe you are expecting that, okay, you are invested in maybe a cooperative whereby they will give you some money. And at the same time, you are planning that if that should be your income, what will you now spend the money on? You now decide, okay, maybe I want to buy a car for next year. And probably you are unable to buy the car and you decide to roll it over to next year. That does not mean that you have bought the car. And that is the question I want to create. That budgets for subnational is just an estimate of revenue and expenditure. So what will come in as revenue and what we now spend the money on. To God be the glory, I've joined the service for the past maybe 25 years. I've never had that the budget performance of a state or of a country is up to 100%. So which means that the revenue that comes in will determine how much we now spend your money on. And that's why most times, most money is being rolled over to the previous year. And most projects, it's being rolled over to the previous year because we may not have enough revenue to even address the issue of the expenditure. And back to your question as regards the issue of capital expenditure. The breakdown that we have shows that 23% of the budget is devoted to infrastructure and is the highest. And the main reason behind this is that when infrastructure is put in place, definitely the economic of that state will really expand. You observe that, thank God for the railway line from Lagos to Ibadan. Thank God for the road construction that His Excellency has been doing within Ibadan municipal. You observe that the economy of Ibadan is thriving. Yesterday, when I was going to Kakafoyin for a program, just both left and right, I observed that a lot of hotels were springing up just because the economic is expanding gradually. And that's why it's good that we're having close to 60% of the expenditure allocated to capital. And maybe just a little bit above, maybe close to 50. Let me say like 43% was allocated to recurrent. Because recurrent, you can hardly see things that people can point to as regard what the government has done, because recurrent is more like paying salaries of the staff and other overhead costs. So it's good for us to have at least the capital expenditure to be higher than recurrent. And it's good for that state, it's good for that country.
Okay, so what's I'd like you to tell us the implication of capital being higher than the capital expenditure, like you mentioned now. What's the implication when it's higher?
The implication is that the citizen will enjoy the dividend of democracy.
How?
Because, for instance, there was a time that we were at the town hall meeting, stakeholders meeting. Somebody who is a roadside mechanic mentioned that early are people bringing their vehicles for repair. So it means that due to the road construction that we are experiencing in your states, it means that people early have maybe any issue or any reason to go and visit their mechanics apart from maybe servicing their vehicles. And it's part of dividend of democracy that at least people enjoy. And apart from this, industry will string up and there will be employment.
Okay. Now let's look at it. I'd like to take you back to the issue of 2025 performance. At what level would you say the 2025 budget performed? And which of the sector performed most? Let's look at that.
Okay, thank you. I have with me here the revenue performance for 2025. And we have revenue items, as I will be mentioning them. We have the IGR. IGR is a type of revenue being generated internally. We have two types of performance here. The first type is what I call pro rata performance. And it can also be tagged as maybe average performance. And the way we calculated the pro rata performance is, we believe that we have the actual between January and September, the actual performance or the actual revenue from January to September. And what we now did is that, okay, if the estimate for the entire year, let's assume it's like 1 million naira, we divide it by 12 and multiply by 9 for us to know the actual estimate expected for that 9 years. And that's what we now use to compute that we call pro rata performance. And we have overall performance. Overall performance is just assuming that maybe the year has ended. And what's the actual against the estimated figure. For the IGR, the budgeted amount for this year was 143 billion plus. And when we are talking about pro rata, it means that at the end of 9 months, we are expected to generate a revenue of the sum of 109 billion naira, sorry. But as at September, we have generated 63 billion naira. If we now compute that, as I've explained earlier on, we observe that the pro rata performance will be around 59.25%, while the overall performance will be 44.44%. We have other revenue items like statutory allocation, we have VAT, we have other VAC distribution, and we have capital receipts. If you now go to the entire total, the grand total for the pro rata performance for revenue is 74.22 as at September. Then the overall performance.
74.22 what?
74.2%.
Okay.
6%. Therefore, the overall performance, that's 55.66%.
That's over average.
The overall average is 74.22.
Okay.
But
That's what I'm saying.
74.22. But assuming the year has ended, and based on our performance as at now, at least we can say that our performance is at 55.66. But we know that the year has not ended. Definitely, we are still going to generate revenue in the month of October. We generated revenue in the month of October, this November and December. So by December, we expected the revenue to be even above that 74.22%. I'm very sure of that.
Okay, so
that's for revenue.
By the virtue of pro rata.
Pro rata, exactly.
Okay. Now, looking at that's for revenue generation, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Which sector performed excellently well in budget implementation for 2025?
Based on this revenue item, we are having order fact distribution. Order fact distribution. And order fact distribution, based on this performance, for pro rata, is around 221.13%. And for overall performance, is 165.85%. So it means that even when the year has ended, for order fact distribution, we have exceeded.
That's for fact. Now, let's look at some of the items where government said they were going to put the money in. For instance, we have a budget that we expect to implement for 2026 that is just being presented by His Excellency. So for the one presented in 2025, would you say that the educational sector did well? Would you say that, we're able to implement above 50% in the agricultural sector, in the mining sector? Which ministry, are we able to at least go above 50% in our implementation? Because again, it's not enough to present a budget. It is very important for implementation to happen.
I quite agree with you. Actually, we have a document in my ministry. We call it performator.
Sorry?
Performator.
Performator.
That document is meant for us to track the performance across MDs. You'll be able to know the performance in terms of revenue, in terms of expenditure. And generally, I can say that some of the ministry, especially Board of Internal Revenue, has really tried, because the performance at least is very high, at least above 50. And likewise, like the Bureau of Public Procurement, in terms of revenue, I can say that even they have surpassed the targets for this year, 2025. So, assuming I have that document with me here, I can easily run through the revenue performance across MDs.
Okay.
But I'm not having that
document. Don't worry, we're actually focusing on 2026, okay. and that's why you're here. Okay. So let's go to 2026.
2026 now. Actually, we have to also take a look at what we have seen in 2025. Talking about the performator, the performance of the MDAs. Now, let's look at the situation that we have on ground, in the states. Present conditions. Now, let's look at how the budget will actually impact, especially education and health services. How will the impact be felt there? Will it be something that will be seen quickly, or they would have to wait a bit more before, they start seeing those things that, we have actually promised the people of your state?
Okay. There are a lot of activities that have been going on in this year 2025 budgets that is going to be rolled over to 2026. A lot of activities. And His Excellency said one thing, that he would like to complete all the ongoing projects before the end of this administration. That was his promise. And as a result of that, there are of activities that were given priorities. And that's why infrastructure is taking a larger share of the budget. Let me just tell us the breakdown. for this year, 2020-26. As you mentioned earlier, Roma, the total expenditure for this year is for next year budget is 891 billion 985 million 74,480 naira 75 kobo. And we are told that recurrent expenditure is just about 43.63% of the total budget. While capital expenditure is like 54.37%. There are a lot of approval that a lot of MDs have obtained for them to implement budget for this year, 2025. That maybe they are able to access part of the money. And that's why the budget of 2026 will just be a continuity of what has been happening in 2025. The education that we are talking about, we have, let me just tell us the distribution, budgeted distribution of the budget according to sectors. We have here let me first of all tell us distribution by item. That I will not go sector by sector.
All right.
For expenditure, we have personnel costs. This is the money dedicated for the payment of salaries. We have 17.52%. 17.52%. We have overheads. Overheads, there are a lot of projects also under overhead, but they may not be physical projects that one can easily see. It's taking 13.68%. Then we have what we call Consolidated Revenue Fund Charges, CRFC. We have something that is being called conditional cash contribution. It's just a contribution that is required for grants to be assessed.
Yes.
So if you don't have that cash contribution, there is no way you can access grants. Like Subeb, Subeb, the federal government will ask them to bring 2 billion for you to have access to 2 billion. So if you don't have that kind of money with you, it means that there will not be any way that we'll be able to access. And also, these consolidated revenue fund charges also take care of gratuity of the civil servants. His Excellency promised that by the end of May 2027, all the gratuity for civil servants that have retired must be paid. So this also will be able to source funds for us to do that. So for total recurrent, we have 43.63. And for capital expenditure, we have 56.37%. Going to the sectorial breakdown of the expenditure. Education sector have a share of 17.40. We were in a meeting on Monday whereby somebody raised an issue as regards this education sector that for this current year, the allocation for the percentage allocated to education was around 21%. Now we are having 17.4%. I need to tell us that UNESCO standards stipulated that it should be between 15 and 20. So it means that we are within UNESCO standards.
Why can't we do 20?
Then, apart from that, the amount allocated for education for last year was around 140 billion. For this year, we are having 155 billion. And by our own calculation, we observed that there was an increase of 7% of what was allocated for education last year.
Okay.
For agric, we are having 2.24%. I also need to say this, that there are a lot of capital projects that we make agric sector to strive that has been grouped under infrastructure. For instance, there are a lot of road constructions that will lead to our farm settlements. So it means that definitely when we are talking about agric sectors, if we can remove the funds that will be used to at least upgrade these farm settlements from infrastructure, definitely the priority will be more than this. Then for health, we are having 7.94%. 7.94% for health. Then for infrastructure, we are having 22.46%. That's why I said that infrastructure took the highest percentage. Then we have commerce and industry, 1.29%. 1.29%. For environment, we are having 0.61%. For finance and economic planning, we are having 16.8%. The main reason why we are having 16.8% for finance and economic planning is as a result of the cash counterpart contribution that Ministry of Finance is warehousing.
Okay, before you continue, PS, let's quickly go on a break. We need to pay some bills.
Okay.
I'm sure you like that.
No problem.
When we come back, of course, we'll continue the conversation.
Okay.
Just stay with us.
Thank you.
What wakes you up in the morning? Is it the sunrise? Is it the alarm? No. It's your dream that wakes you every day. It's what drives you like a powerful engine. That's why you start strong every day with the rich, creamy taste of Nescafe Original 3-in-1, carefully crafted from selected coffee beans. You are on your hustle, and you won't stop until you succeed. Start strong, finish strong.
All right, welcome back. It's still AM120. And of course, our PS, of course, Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning is still here with us in the studio. And of course, we've been talking about the 2026 budget. We started with the 2025 budget implementation, and now we're on the 2026 budget. And before we went on that break, you gave us breakdown sector by sector. Fantastic. And you also try to clarify some of the reasons why some are high and some are where they are. Okay, so, of course, let's look at the education, for instance. You said UNESCO standard is between 15% and 20%. And one would have thought that a state like Oyo State, we could have done even above UNESCO standard, maybe like 25%. The need to prioritize education. The need to have more children in school, because if you look at the total number of out-of-school children in Nigeria, and particularly in Oyo State, it calls for concern. So how would you say we performed in 2025 budget in the educational sector, and why didn't we look at improving upon 18% to about 22%? My opinion.
I quite agree with you, because I told you that for last year, it was around 21%. But the main reason why we're having 17.4% for this year is that in line with the theme of this year's budgets, we want to expand the economy so that at least investors can come in and invest in the states. And as justify that there was a 7% increase from what we had last year. Not that it's just the, this percentage performance, this percentage distribution is just based on the denominator, which is far higher than last year. And because a lot of investment is going towards infrastructure, that's why we are having this percentage allocation for education. But that does not mean that this percentage will not solve the challenges of education. You know, apart from this, we are having counterpart contribution. We are housed in the Ministry of Finance for SUBEB, for education. So it means that when this counterpart fund and the grants are maybe they are able to access the grants through the provision of the counterpart contribution, it will definitely increase. Though it may not come to the education sector, but at least the counterpart contribution will come from the Ministry of Finance, and the grant will come from the federal government. And this grant also is just a revenue item under the revenue item that we are having for the year 2026. So definitely this percentage, I'm very sure it will address the challenges of education. And I need to tell you, ma, we are not just sitting in our office at arriving at these figures. We need to appreciate His Excellency for one thing. He is the person that believes in science, logic, and data in taking decisions. For us to arrive at all this figure, we have a document called Medium-Term Expenditure Framework, which we developed. This one is the document that gave us the budget size
and that's
for this year.
Practice.
Exactly. So it gave us the budget size for this year. And we have medium-term expenditure framework. This medium-term expenditure framework is the one that allows us to allocate resources to various sectors. So it was based on these two documents that we are able to arrive at the documents at the size of the budget and the allocation to various sectors. And I need to say this, that we also went round to the 7 geopolitical zones of the states. And the essence is just to have a bottom-top approach to project process. And most of the requests from that stakeholders meeting tailored towards infrastructure. Most of the requests. So it means that they observe that most of the education sectors, the government is addressing it. But that of infrastructure, there is need for government to fast track towards the actualization of improving the infrastructure across the states. The stakeholders meeting, I need to further state this, that His Excellency, he was the one that chaired the one that we did in Ibadan at International Conference Center. And we also did at Shaki. It was His Excellency Deputy Governor that came to chair it. We did in Seyi, Ogolua, Lagelu, and Ibarapa Central. So, and there were a lot of contributions which we are factoring into this year budget.
So you're saying that the budget of 2026, you did a need assessment of the people, and it's a people's budget. So it's not imagination of the ministry or the sectors, but it was based on the request of the people across the state. Why am I saying that? Let me also give kudos to, of course, the team that has put this budget together, because that is best practice, to actually know the need of the people before, the budget is being drawn or put together. Having said that, let's quickly look at the agricultural sector. If you look at the agricultural sector, last year, we had food scarcity, according to some school of thought. Some felt there was scarcity of resources, that the food items were readily available. Some felt, the funds yes, were there, but people could not access food items. It was a different thing this year. Food availability, you see a lot of fruits, plantain, pineapples, a lot of fruits this year, a lot of food items came, and we had plenty. Now, how will this budget reflect? You agree with me that Oyo State is an arable state. How will it reflect in our production of food items, in our storage? We produce a lot, but those that get spoiled along the way, I mean, what plans do we have when it comes to storage of food items to avoid wastage?
Thank you.
Does this budget cater for that?
Definitely. We have what we call special agro-processing zones. And this budget takes care of that aspect. And the essence is just to transform primary agricultural outputs into higher value products, to reduce post-harvest losses and boost agro-industrialization. When we are doing the presentation at the State House Assembly, a member of the House raised an issue with cashew nuts in Ogumosho, that during harvests, that a lot of the produce. And His Excellency said that there is a factory in Lagelu that is processing that cashew nuts. And he now branched into that office or to that company and asked if they have any challenge. And the response was, they don't have enough raw materials. Okay. So it means that there was a missing link between the company that we process and a lot of areas where these raw materials are located. And he has promised at least to ensure that that connectivity is enhanced. And this special agro-processing zone, definitely we address. And also we're having, formerly we normally have what we call farm settlements. But now it's being transformed into farm estates. We have one at Fashola. For next year, we are preparing to have another one at Erua and another one at Ijai. So that at least most of this farm produce will be processed into finished products for the consumption of the people in your state. And you may mention that this year, that the amount of money that we are spending on farm produce has really dropped. The main reason for this...
Before you tell us why it has dropped, let's go on this break. Let's pay some bills again, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Don't go away.
Unripened yellow corn, individually whole flaked to preserve its natural goodness. That's what makes Nasco cornflakes truly whole flaked.
All right, thank you very much for staying tuned to us. Yes, we're still analyzing the Oyo State 2026 budget. But before we go ahead, we have this report created by our reporters. And of course, I will give you that right now so you understand better what we are talking about.
This marks the 7th time Governor Seyi Makinde has tabled our budget before the Assembly of the total allocation of 891.9 billion naira. According to him, total recurrent stands at 389.3 billion naira, while capital expenditure is 502.64 billion naira. Governor Makinde said 210 billion naira is earmarked for infrastructure, health 70.84 billion naira, agriculture 19.9 billion naira, while 435.9 billion naira will fund other priority sectors such as security, education, and other critical areas.
Mr. Speaker, sir, honorable members of the House, we stand at the threshold of a new chapter. The 2026 budget of economic expansion, totaling 891 billion, 985 million, 74,480 naira 79 kobo. 891-985-074-480.79. Builds on the foundation of stability to drive productivity and inclusive growth. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, this is another milestone budget. We are heading closer to the ideal of 60-40 ratio between capital and recurrent expenditure.
Responding to issues raised by the lawmakers, Governor Makinde said all projects going on in the state are targeted towards ensuring accelerated development in the state. The governor clarified that attempts by certain groups to politicize ongoing circular road projects will not impede the government's completion of these projects, which are central to Ibadan land's economy.
I was forced to release from archive the documents to show adverts in Nigeria Tribune newspaper, taking those 500 meters by the right and left on November 21st, 2018. Just imagine the governor in November 2018. But we are engaging with our people. EBT Development Party, we are beyond that place. I promised the people when they came under the bridge, DB, if it's about to integrate, when we integrate them, if they think, oh, maybe if we attack Sheyi Makinde and politicize this thing, maybe they will vote for them.
In his remark, the Speaker of Oyo State House of Assembly, Honorable Adebo Ogundoyin, pledged the continuous support with the executive arm of government in ensuring effective implementation of the budget estimates. Honorable Ogundoyin appreciated the state governor for working harmoniously with the legislative arm in facilitating meaningful development to the state. Governor Sheyi Makinde presented a total budget estimate of 891.98 billion naira, tagged Budget of Economic Expansion, with capital expenditure receiving the highest allocation of 502.6 billion naira, representing over 56% of the entire budget.
Welcome back. Yes, we're still analyzing Oyo State 2020's budget, and that was a report on the reading of the budget. We still have Mr. Tunde Ayonleke, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, representing Professor Musibao Babatunde Adetunji. Right, and you want to something with the conversation around agriculture and the rationale behind some things that have happened.
Okay. For this year, the Ministry of Agriculture and Natural Resources actually did a program called tractorization. The essence of this program is to pay half of the amount that will be required for you to cultivate your land. If you are having like 20 acres of land, and maybe it costs like, for instance, 500,000 naira for you to cultivate, the state government will pay 250,000 naira, and now we have to come with 250,000 naira. And apart from this, there are a lot of provision for seedlings, free, animal feeds, free for them to use or just to support the farmers. And it was as a result of this, I think the program started last year, So I continued this year. So it was a result of this that we observed that the food items actually went down, particularly in your state. Most of things produced in your state, like cassava, because I live at Olumeru, you observe very early in the morning, you see those trailers loading cassava. I don't even know where they are taking the cassava to, maybe outside the states, but they are produced in these states as a result of the support given to farmers by the state governments.
If government is giving support to farmers, don't you think that such an item, raw materials, we should discourage moving away of our raw materials of farm produce that can be used to produce things like gari, fufu, should not be taken as raw out of here. Rather, let production happen here so that people can have more work to do and people still have more to eat. Except for saying that we have more than 100%, and that's why we're dishing out. I mean, if government has put in, that support, then one would have thought that there should be regulation.
I quite agree with you. Before the presentation of the budget to the State House of Assembly, we have what we call pre-treasury board meeting. Okay. And at that pre-treasury board meeting, all MBAs, close to 1997, were invited to come and defend their budgets. We took the ministry up, as well what you have just said, and the response was that they are planning at ensuring that that attitude is regulated. And if possible, we need to have maybe industry for us to process those raw materials to finished products. So the ministry, I believe, is part of what they have brought into their budget for next year. And I believe that it will be fully implemented.
All right, let's go to health. We're actually taking it based on the way you call those items out. We know that in your state we have an health insurance scheme. The governor has also come up with some health programs for the people. And to my mind, I was wondering, will this 7.94% be adequate to meet the need? Now, if you look at some of our hospitals, we need to put more things in place to be able to meet up with quality health service delivery for the people in your state. We have a lot of private hospitals in your state. And I tell you, we've had several complaints about some of the private hospitals. There was one I learned about somewhere in Okeado that, the hospital was running below standard and people were losing their lives there. And, many private hospitals. But one would have thought that if our government hospitals were doing well, our primary healthcare centers were doing well, people may not necessarily visit the private hospitals. So what plans do we have for our healthcare services in your state from this budget?
From this budget, the Ministry of Health is proposing to rehabilitate all the general hospitals across the states.
How many general hospitals do we have?
14.
14 general hospitals across the state.
Across the states. So they are planning to rehabilitate them. And the fund required for these projects may not come from the Ministry of Health. It may come from the Ministry of Finance, whereby I said that they are warehousing that the catapult cash contribution. So this Ministry of Finance that is warehousing that fund. And the ministry is expecting a grant for the ministry to ensure that all these general hospitals are put in proper shape. Not only that they will be rehabilitating, they are also providing medical equipment to all these general hospitals.
New medical
equipment. And if you recall, when it's, let's say, maybe during the period of this administration, I think 250 primary healthcare boards centers were renovated. And the plan of His Excellency is to have a functional primary health care board, so a primary health care center per ward. We believe that at least by next year, all the wards in Oyo State, we have at least one functional primary health care center. This also has been included in the budget. As regards the OSHA, Oyo State Insurance Agency, they came for their budget defense. And the challenge that they have here as regards the premium, we have informed them on what they need to do just to strengthen. And apart from that, there are a lot of partners that want to support people to be enrolled, to benefit from that scheme. The ministry is also warehousing. The Ministry of Finance is also warehousing the counterpart contribution required for the grant to be assessed, so that at least people will be enrolled freely. They have donor partners that are willing to support. But there may be a condition that also the state government must come up with this amount of money. And even as at now, our pensioners, they are not paying. They are not paying for them to be enrolled.
So it's free?
It's free. As at today, I don't know for next year. But as at today, for our pensioners, I don't know about tomorrow. But as at today, it's free for all our pensioners.
And since when has it been free?
Maybe 2 years ago, since 2 years ago. So.
Now that takes me to the issue of gratuity that you mentioned earlier, that His Excellency is working really hard to ensure that all gratuities are paid before the end of his tenure. So are you saying that for everyone, including those that retires on the 1st of May 2027, they will also get their gratuity before he's out of office? All civil servants.
You won't be surprised that the fund going to the Ministry of Estab on monthly basis for the payment of gratuity has greatly increased. So that was the plan of His Excellency. And for next year, that we're having a full budget, I'm very sure that definitely up to 80% of the people who have retired before his administration and during his administration, we receive their gratuity. Because for 27, we are just having 5 months. So it means that consideration will be paid for the payment of gratuity for the retired civil servants for the year 2026.
Okay, given that assurance, I want us to drive this conversation a bit different. Now, we've seen the performance of some other sectors, ministries in Oyo State in the past year. And I would like us to look a lot more at, culture and tourism in the state. We've had a number of events, let's target festivals now, which a lot of people have enjoyed. And this speaks to the good work being done in the state. But definitely, if you're giving people something, we would want more. And a part of that culture and tourism also includes sports. I think I would need to add that because of my own favorite parts now. So speaking about this, what part of the budget is speaking to culture and tourism, sports tourism? Because a lot of people want to come and watch football. We saw an international game not too long ago. And, some people would want some parts of that to continue. So what part of the budget speaks to that would ensure that there is continuity, that we continue thriving in those areas and, it will bring more investors, because the more investors we have in sports as well, in culture, in tourism, the better it will be for the state.
Thank you, sir. For the breakdown of the total expenditure, though we combine women, youth, and sports together. Women, youth, and sports, we combine it together, and we're having 1.21% allocated. You will recall that His Excellency created a Ministry of Culture and Tourism. Formerly, it was in the Ministry of Information. But because of the interest of His Excellency on improving the economy of the state through tourism and culture, that's why he created that ministry. And if you observe this year, the ministry has done a lot of activities at ensuring that the culture of the state is enriched. And apart from that, there has been an increase, great increase, in the number of maybe hotels that we are having in Oyo State. And the reason is that a lot of people are coming in from various parts of the country to see what we are having in the states. Of recent, the twins were celebrated in Igbora. I think they had a Google festival. There are a lot of activities that they have done, and this has attracted a lot of people to come and see our culture in Oyo State. Though, according to the breakdown that we're having here, I believe that culture will be classified among others, because I'm just having has to do for.
Okay, when we need to go on a break. When we come back, you're going to explain to us. I'm most particular about that. Why you have to merge women with youth and sports? Because one would have thought that by the population of women in Oyo State, we thought we should have had a separate budget. We'll be right back. Let's go on a break.
All right, welcome back. Yes, we're still analyzing the Oyo State 2026 budget. And yes, you are onto a case about why women were merged. I'm also on why youth and sports are merged with women.
Well, youth and sports are in the same ministry.
I'm saying we are merged with women. I mean,
yes.
Come on. We also have...
Let me quickly share this with you. The population of Oyo State is estimated to be around 7.6 million, with a higher number of female than male. Specifically, there are approximately 4 million female, 3.6 million male, making up 53% and 47%, I beg your pardon, of the total population respectively. Meaning that women have 53% population percentage, and male have 47. So tell me, there's a Ministry for Women Affairs and Social Inclusion. So merging the two together, I'm sorry, I just be a crime against humanity.
Before I go ahead with your question, what you have just mentioned is not right as regards the population.
Please give us the right
state.
figure.
As at now, the estimated population for your state is around 10.5 million.
10.5 million.
Using the growth rate of 3.5%. That is the estimated population. I've had it times and about people will be saying that the population of your state is around 7 million, 8 million, but I'm telling you authoritatively that the population of your state is around 10.5 million, using the growth rate of 3.5%.
Okay.
And back to your question. You know, I was telling us the sectorial composition. And women, youth and sports, they belong to the same sector. Maybe as a result of the issue that we have now raised, maybe when we get back to our office, we may decide to look into it and see if possible, we can break. Because as regards women, youths, we believe that they belong, and sport, they belong to the same sector. This reason behind this is that, you know, women, they are the one that we can say that they can support our youths for them to achieve great things.
I honestly do not agree.
Okay, don't worry. When we get back to our office,
there's a need for your ministry to separate it, have a separate budget line for women.
No, we have a separate budget line. We have a budget line for Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Inclusion.
So that women will know that, they are being seen as women.
Let me just create this expression. We have a separate budget line for Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Inclusion. A separate budget line for the Ministry of Youth and Sports. But when you are talking about sectoral allocation, we normally classify them together. But from what you have raised now, maybe we look into it and see.
Even your allocation show that there's 1.21% for this group, this sector you have put together. And to my mind, that's quite low, because you would agree with me that disability is also, or don't let me say disability, inclusion is also part of women affairs. That aside that, let's look at it. What have you allocated to the Agency for Disability? Because these are one of the vulnerable groups that we have in Oyo State. And we have an agency, in Oyo State. What have we allocated for them? Do we have a separate budget line for them? If we do have a separate budget line for them, let us know.
We have a separate budget line for people living with disability. And for their capital is around 1.4 billion naira for people living with disability. You know, the His Excellency created an agency for people with disability. Fantastic. And we are having at least SA who is in charge. So for this year, they approach us for various activities that they intend to do. And because of that, we allocated 1.4 billion naira for them to use, to spend for next year.
And addendum to that, tell us, there's an allocation for them, they have an agency, fantastic. What are we doing to ensure that the state's infrastructures, also allows persons with disability to also move around? You recall, there are schools that are currently being renovated. If you go to Idiakwe, there are some public schools there that are being renovated. And there are best practice. There are global standards for a society that has persons with disability in their numbers. What are we doing to ensure that our infrastructure, both the ones we are currently building and the ones that have been built, have these ramps for them to be able to also live their normal lives?
I quite agree with you, man. Because early this year, when I resumed as permanent secretary of the ministry, they came on advocacy visits to my ministry. And we received them with my honorary commissioner. And part of issue they raised is what you have just said. And what we did as a ministry is to ensure that we write all the necessary MBA to abide with that standard.
Because there's a law.
Exactly, to abide with that. And during the pre-tertiary board also, we inform them the need to ensure that whatever they are doing, that they should not be left. They should ensure that they are incorporated and ensuring that they also live a normal life. So during our treasury board meeting, we ensure that we emphasize this to virtually up the MPs. And we have written, we have a maybe accurate copy of letters sent to various ministries in my office. So for them to ensure that they do the needful in regards to what's just raised.
Well, I hope we'll actually see that.
Then we still do follow up and still possible to write a reminder.
I'm sure if that meeting you said they came on a courtesy visit was held on the second floor of your ministry.
No, ground floor.
The
ground floor.
They'll be able to move
at least our DFP is using ground floor, so we have to, even the commissioner to come from his own office to come and meet us
so that you can
in the office.
accommodate them and include them in your conversation.
All right, now what I'm interested in at this point of the conversation is the feedback mechanisms that we have put in place. So let us know. I know you have the performeter, like you mentioned, but nothing's as good as having the people also give their feedback on how everything is pinching them inside, what they are feeling, how they are seeing it, and the effects of, the governance, the budget allocation, the implementation, and all that. So are there feedback mechanisms in place to ensure that people understand what is going on and they, can tell you, okay, this is what we are seeing, and we think that this is how it should go?
Honestly, I need to appreciate His Excellency because he has proved that there is need for us to have what we call quarterly performance review. At this review, we invite virtually all the stakeholders to come and see how far we have gone in the current year budgets. Apart from that, we also showcase to them what projects that the government has executed for that period. So it's done on quarterly basis. For instance, for the first quarter, we will try to do it maybe around April. For the second quarter, we try to do it maybe around August. And at the same time, we normally do the one for half year and for the annual budget performance. So at that meeting, we normally invite virtually all the stakeholders to come and see how far the government has gone.
All right, now tell us about the debts and revenue sourcing that we have for this budget for it to be implemented.
The what?
The whole revenue sourcing, IGR and all of that. How we intend to get the whole budget implemented so that people would understand better.
Okay, thank you. I know I told you that the performance of any budget relies on revenue. So if we fail in generating the desired revenue, it means that it may affect the performance of the budget because expenditure relies on revenue. It's what comes in that we now spend money on. For the 2026 proposed revenue allocation, we are having statutory allocation to take 15.7%. We are having value-added tax. You know the statutory allocation is being released by the federal government to states. Likewise, the value-added tax based on your performance at 22.4%. Then we have order back distribution. That takes 5.74%. We have capital receipts and loans, 36.2%. We have grants. You know, I told you that grants normally comes in whenever you are able to make available your counterpart part contribution. So for the grants, we are expecting 0.53%.
That's 0.53.
0.53%. Then for the Oyo State BIR, that should be around 10.48. 10.48. Oyo State BIR. Then other revenue sources, 8.99. That's because up to 100%. So that's the allocation in terms of percentage.
So you're showing us that it will get implemented.
Definitely, we are very sure. Because I told you, not that we are just sitting in our office and just allocating figure to all these various items. We develop what we call MTEF, medium-term expenditure framework. We developed that to guide us as we had the budget size. And all these items, at least, it's just like trade analysis to see how maybe what we are able to generate as regard all these various items for the past years, and for us to even see, know the inflation threat, for us to know the trend of our GDP, and so on and so forth, for us to come up with this figure. And that's why we believe that this budget will stand the test of time.
All right, we have to go on this break. When we return, I will also continue the conversation right here.